Welcome to Leading Organizations That Matter, a podcast about leadership, organizational culture, and how we find meaning and purpose in our work. I'm your host, Ray Spadoni, former healthcare CEO, current consultant, author, and speaker. Today's topic is declared culture versus actual culture. In most nonprofits and mission-driven organizations, you can find their mission, vision, and values on nicely printed, usually laminated sheets in conference rooms, waiting areas, and certainly on their company's websites. In my experience, what's on the laminated sheets or websites can describe the reality of that organization with uncanny accuracy. Unfortunately, sometimes it's the opposite. It's a great ruse, mythology, and ultimately pretty meaningless. These statements can provide great insight into that organization's culture, and namely whether the mission, vision, and values are actually relevant at all to the culture. I like to ask members of the board of directors and management team a pretty open-ended question about this. I'll ask, can you tell me about this organization's culture? Often I'll get a frank and insightful response. It's clear to me that those leaders have their fingertips squarely planted on that organization's pulse. But sometimes, not so much. Where this gets interesting is when further experience and intelligence gathering at that organization reveals a gap between the declared culture and the actual one. Does a gap such as this exist in your organization? I could describe myself as trying to get in shape and lose weight, but if you observed my actual lifestyle, you might think otherwise. The psychologist Carl Jung often mentioned that you can tell someone's true intentions by observing what they actually do, the outcome of their behaviors. In other words, actions speak louder than words. You have to tiptoe carefully through these issues in an organization, but I often find it to be quite helpful and sometimes very illuminating to point this difference out to organizations who are willing to consider such feedback. The most obvious setting typically is with an organization committed to true transformation, an organization that has decided that it needs to change its course and is willing to dig down deeper into the roots rather than simply dealing with what's up there on the surface. These are organizations who recognize the significant impact that their culture has to their prospects and to their long-term success. So I'll sometimes create a graphic showing some words and phrases that describe that organization's stated organizational culture, and then on the other side, some actions that might suggest otherwise. I'm keen to not draw conclusions here, to try not to lead any horses to water, but rather to simply see how the conversation unfolds. I've done this several times with my clients and often get a great response. Leaders are confronted with this gap between aspiration and reality, and they can find it motivating to then work together to see how they can close it. Organizational turnarounds frequently and necessarily have to focus on the hard-sided issues. That is, things like cost structure, revenue flows, their volumes, market analysis, debt restructuring, etc. But ignoring the soft-sided ones, like organizational culture, can prove to be quite short-sighted. Thanks for listening. I hope that you'll consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your platform of choice. That helps others find us here, and that would be very, very much appreciated. My mission is to help empower organizations that matter by supporting those who lead them. Feel free to learn more about me and my work at redsailsadvisors.com.